Chapter 6, Getting Acquainted. Sarah's negative memories from her entire life had been forgotten, clouded over and hidden from her consciousness. She did not remember physical pain, such as scraping her knee as a child. She did not remember any embarrassing moments, any emotional or psychological pain. She did not remember that her mother passed away when Sarah was 10 years old. She did not remember the first years of her stepmother or Toby in her life, and all of the positive memories were hazy and dreamlike. Some of her good memories and clarity were still missing. Sarah could see the happy memories of her stepmother and Toby, but she could not recall who they were to her, just that they existed in her life. In the castle, Sarah was given her own bedchamber with a wardrobe of outfits to match Jareth's. She dressed into some of her new clothes and walked around the castle, curious to see what her life would be like from now on. She walked past little goblins wild and free. It was fairly messy, as goblins make messes and don't clean up after themselves. However, there were some beautiful places within the castle. Sarah came across a room she recognized, the ballroom. It had not been a fantasy or a dream. There was a ballroom. She did not know it at the time, but her experiences there in that room happened inside one of the Goblin King's crystals. It had been an illusion. The room existed, but she had never actually set foot in it until that day exploring the castle as princess of the kingdom. Sarah looked around at the mirrors on the walls, the chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, the fine tables and chairs, and the candles. She was interrupted by Jareth. He walked up to her and put his hand on her cheek. She felt slightly uncomfortable, but fought the feelings. Logic was telling her that she and the king were a couple, that they had both chosen this life they were beginning together. So Sarah forced a smile and looked into his eyes for a moment. The Goblin King took Sarah's hand and led her toward the center of the room, where they began to dance. Chapter 7, A Unique Infant. Toby was well into the maze now. He had made many turns, but he wasn't sure how he was doing or if he was going in the right direction. Then he noticed something that stood out, a door, a simple wooden door with no doorknob or knocker. Curious, Toby pushed on the door. He expected it to open to the other side of the wall. However, he found that inside the door was a new place entirely, a wooded area full of trees and nature. Even more curious now, Toby decided to enter the woods. The boy noticed as he walked through the trees a red bird, a phoenix. The bird was shortly joined by other phoenix birds, a family. But then the wind picked up. It became so strong that the trees bent and leaves flew up and hit Toby forcefully. He turned around to head back to the door he had come through, only it was gone. The wind and leaves hurt his skin. He needed to find shelter. Looking about, he found a hollow in the trunk of a tree, big enough to house himself. He pushed his way through the wind and crawled inside. He was safe there from the storm. A few squeaking sounds arose, and Toby realized he was not alone. He jerked his head to the side when he noticed where the creature was located. His eyes adjusted in the dark, and he saw a small, furry creature sitting next to him, red and orange, cute and cuddly. The little thing was scared and alone. Toby gently brushed the top of its head. It didn't bite, so he decided it might be safe to care for the creature. He picked it up, and the little thing smiled, an adorable smile. Toby smiled back, and then the creature's head detached from its body. Toby almost dropped the thing, it startled him so greatly. But the head did not fall to the ground. It floated in the air. Then it returned, reattaching to the little body. The creature giggled. It was very odd and unexpected. Toby didn't know what to think. The gleaming eyes of the infant brought back the happy, peaceful vibes. Suddenly, breaking through the moment, a rough creature entered the trunk hollow looking for shelter from the storm. It was ugly with dark fur and lots of teeth. Immediately, it spotted the unique infant. It licked its lips and eyed the baby. Toby picked up a sharp stick from the ground to defend the infant. pushing the stick toward the ugly creature, who was burying its mouth full of teeth. Toby was worried about all of those sharp teeth. He really hoped the stick plan would work in his favor. Toby pressed the stick toward the monster. It backed up more and more with each jabbing movement. At the entrance of the hollow, the creature stopped. Toby gave it a little sharp poke to show he was serious. In response, the monster gave an angry huff and turned to run away. Toby and the baby both sighed with relief. The sigh of the tiny cute thing made Toby smile again. "That was brave, wasn't it?" Toby asked aloud. The wind died down, and Toby looked outside. The storm seemed to be passing almost as quickly as it had come. The boy heard voices and saw 2 orange and red furry creatures heading toward the tree. They were still afar off, but Toby figured they would be coming for their little one. Maybe this hollow was his home. If so, Toby might not want to be found there by the parents. He patted the little one's head and said goodbye. Toby poked his head outside, then left the tree. He ran the opposite way of the parents who were coming closer. He ran for a couple of minutes, then slowed down to a walk. Chapter 8, Toby Meets a Knight. As he walked along, Toby saw ahead of him a creature he did recognize, a white horse, trapped in a net. As Toby drew closer, he realized it wasn't a horse, but a unicorn. Toby could hardly believe what he was witnessing. The creature was calling for help and moving nervously, unable to free itself. Toby wanted to free the unicorn. As he walked closer, the unicorn turned its head toward Toby. Its horn pointed directly at him. Toby stopped. He backed away. He continued backing up. As he did, he felt a familiarity to the situation. He had done this before. He remembered last week at school. A boy he knew in his class was being picked on by a bully. Toby had empathy for the boy. He was very similar to Toby, small in stature, kind, and easy prey for bullies. Toby's heart went out to the victim, but what could he do? He didn't know how to help. He backed away then, as he backed away now from this unicorn. He stopped as he backed into a labyrinth wall. Toby felt joy in finding the labyrinth again. The unicorn whimpered, and Toby thought about the great number of things that worried him in his life, how often he backed away in a sense from situations that called for bravery. "I want to help you," Toby said softly, hoping it would calm the beast. He walked slowly toward the net that was tied to a pole up high and again down low. As he drew near, the unicorn got scared and thrashed its head around. Toby ran back, far from the unicorn. He could not do it. That poor unicorn. "I just can't walk away," Toby said. But really, he had about decided that was the only thing he could do. Toby turned around as someone came around the corner. It was a dog, dressed up in clothes, riding upon a dog? The creatures stopped when they saw Toby. "Good day," the dressed-up dog said. Toby's eyes widened. "Hello?" Sir Didymus spotted the unicorn behind him. "Might I be of assistance?" he asked Toby. "Please," Toby replied. Sir Didymus introduced himself as he dismounted his steed. "We shall each take one side and cut the ropes," he instructed Toby before handing him a small knife. Sir Didymus made a sound as he approached the net, a sound very similar to the one the unicorn was making. It seemed to calm the creature. "Have no fear," Sir Didymus proclaimed. He was speaking to the unicorn, but Toby felt more confident, as if the words had been said to him directly. Toby and Sir Didymus both cut the ropes. Then they both pulled on the ropes, and the unicorn bowed its head. The net slid off of the unicorn, and he galloped away. Toby sighed with relief and beamed. He was proud of himself. Chapter 9, An Expert Sense of Smell. Toby handed the small knife back to Sir Didymus, who eyed it, and then said, "Why don't you keep it? You might need it here." This made Toby feel uneasy. What would he do with a knife? He was too scared to use it. "Thank you," Toby said, and Sir Didymus handed him a small sheath to keep it in. Toby tied it to his waist. "I wander the kingdom offering my services for hire, and occasionally helping those in need," he replied. "I am a hero for hire. Quests are my forte." He held up a paper flyer that advertised his services with a picture of him and his steed Ambrosius. "Oh, my name is Toby," replied the boy. "What is thy purpose here, Toby?" the dog asked. "I have to find my sister. She has been kidnapped," Toby replied. "A courageous and sincere endeavor that is," Sir Didymus replied. "Can I be of any assistance?" "I don't have anything to pay you with," Toby said, "but I could really use some help getting to the castle at the center of the labyrinth. Sarah must be there." "My lady? Sarah?" Sir Didymus perked up. "Do you know my sister?" Toby asked in surprise. "It has been years since I've seen her. It's been a while since she has needed my support," Sir Didymus replied. "Nevertheless, she is here." "Harold the Caterpillar told me that the Goblin King is the one who has taken from our home," Toby explained. "I will accompany thee on thy quest, for, with this knowledge, it is my quest too. I shall always come to Sarah's aid," Sir Didymus announced. Toby smiled with relief. Sir Didymus must know this labyrinth well. "How fast can you get me to the center of the labyrinth?" Toby asked. "It might take a day or two," Sir Didymus said. "That's the fastest way through?" Toby asked, disappointed. "The labyrinth has many tricks. 'Tis always changing. The way through today might not be the way through tomorrow," Sir Didymus said. "I shall get us there, fear not." But Toby did have fear, quite a bit of it, hitting him now more than before. He was reaching the realization that he did not know if he would get Sarah back. Finding her was one thing, but what next? How would he get her away from the Goblin King? Toby wasn't brave enough to face any kind of enemy, and this one, he was a man, a king, a villain. "What's this?" Sir Didymus asked. "I smell thy fear." "What?" Toby asked in confusion. "I have a great sense of smell. I pride myself on it," the knight replied, with his chest out and his chin high, his arms raised to rest his fists on his shoulders, waving his head slowly side to side like a flag, waving in the wind. "Okay," Toby replied, believing the words of the dog, but wondering if it was completely true, that he could smell his fear. "I smell it all the time because of Ambrosius, the fearful creature," Sir Didymus said. Ambrosius lowered his face and covered it with his paw in embarrassment. Toby let out a little laugh and began to feel hopeful again. Little moments of joy can lift one's spirit from the deep pits of fear and doubt. The party of three entered the labyrinth together through a doorway nearby. Toby had enough bravery to keep going through the labyrinth, and that was enough for now. That was all he needed at the moment. Chapter 10, Catching Up with Hoggle and Ludo. In a forest, Hoggle balanced on top of Ludo's shoulders as he reached for fruit up in a tree. This fruit was glowing blue and green. The tree was black and dark blue. In fact, the entire forest was dark. Glowing fruits and plants spread throughout. Hoggle was using a net to capture the fruit of the tree. "Ludo hungry," the giant beast said. Then he reached towards the box on the ground that had glowing fruit inside. The movement made Hoggle wobble and fear for falling. "Ludo, no!" Hoggle hollered. "If you touch that fruit, you will get burned." Ludo stopped and stared at the fruit, debating whether it was worth trying. His stomach growled as loud as a beast in the forest. Ludo grabbed at a piece of fruit. It quickly burned his hand, and he had to release it back into the box. The startle of the pain he should have seen coming made his whole body bounce, which resulted in a fast-falling Hoggle to the forest floor. "Ludo's sorry," Ludo said. Hoggle got up and shook the dust off his body like a dog shakes the dust from its fur. "If you eat this fruit now, it will burn your tongue," Hoggle reminded his friend. "Glowing fruit can only be eaten after it's cooled on ice. But it's worth more money than other fruit, so we need to sell it in our fruit stand." Hoggle and Ludo were now partners in a fruit stand business in the Goblin City. Money was tight because the Goblin King taxed Hoggle extra due to his dislike of the goblin. Ludo whimpered in pain, and Hoggle responded, "You'll be fine. Let's find some lunch." Ludo picked up their box of glowing fruit, and they walked away to find another place to retrieve food. Neither of them happened to see the hooded woman rushing through the darkness. Her pale face was adorned with stars tattooed in place, cascading down her left eyebrow. eye and cheekbone. Her eyes painted with golden black paints. She wore a green cloak clipped together by a giant metal dragonfly. Her name was Inara Vile, and she was on an adventure of her own. Inara was startled when she saw a giant silhouette of a monstrous horned beast heading her way, making a loud growling sound. The sound coming from Ludo's hungry stomach sounded like a bloodthirsty beast calling for his food. In the woman's haste to flee the area before the beast got any closer, she did not notice the crystal ball slip out of her satchel as she turned around. It fell onto the forest floor and was left behind. Hoggle and Ludo happened to walk to that exact spot on their way. A glowing fruit reflection from the crystal ball caught Hoggle's eye. "What is that?" Hoggle asked, and he picked up the cold, clear sphere. "It looks like one of Jareth's," Hoggle exclaimed. A shiver ran down his spine. "Should we leave it here?" Hoggle wondered aloud, knowing that was the safest action. However, he could sell it for some good money. "We'll take it to the pawn shop and sell it," Hoggle decided. "But let's hurry. I don't want the Goblin King to catch me with it." "Where'd come from?" Ludo asked. "That's the mysterious part," Hoggle admitted. He placed the crystal under some of the fruit to hide it as they traveled. There was no reason to invite trouble by drawing attention with it in view. Chapter 11, Tour of the Castle. Sarah and Jareth spent time together, creating new memories and forming a bond. Sarah dined with Jareth. She lounged around the throne room while Jareth made kingly decisions and led the goblin court. The throne room was not grand. It was not clean. It was very much like the Goblin City, old and unkept. It certainly wasn't Sarah's favorite place to be, but she had her garden and she had other rooms to discover inside the castle. "Will you show me some of your best rooms?" she asked her king. "Give me a tour?" He was happy to oblige. Jareth showed Sarah a sacred room where he preserved his magic crystals. The walls on both sides of the room were lined with shelves which held each crystal ball, rows upon rows of crystal spheres. The room itself arched from the walls on either side of the entrance to the back wall. A small waterfall adorned the center of the back of this room, pouring from the ceiling to the floor and disappearing into a small pool of water on the ground, the water rotating from in front of the wall, up behind the wall, and out from the ceiling once more. The room was an extraordinary experience. Sarah could only imagine how much magic was contained in that single room. Next, Jareth took her to a room she had been in once before, an illusion room filled with stairs and arched doorways, some of which were right side up, some upside down, and some even on their sides. Sarah looked with amazement. She felt a sense of familiarity. She could almost remember. She could catch glimpses of being in this room. It was unsettling and yet still a remarkable sight to see. Jareth watched curiously, wanting to see what was going through her mind. Did she remember this room at all? The Goblin King remembered all too well. This was where she chose for the final time to save her brother and break Jareth's heart. She had found the power within herself that Jareth dreaded, the power to leave him, the power to defeat him, the confidence and strength all people have inside somewhere, whether they know it or not. They moved on from the grand room. Jareth took her to her garden. "That's enough excitement for one day, my pet." The moon was large that evening, shining so brightly it lit up the entire garden. "You will be happy here, Sarah," he said, and kissed her cheek. Sarah smiled and held Jareth's hand. A couple of goblins came into the garden, chattering and laughing. "Get out of here, you ugly warts!" the Goblin King shouted. "This is only for Sarah." This, of course, startled Sarah. Jareth had switched from sweet and gentle to outraged and fearful in a heartbeat. Though his anger was thrown away from her and not at her, it did place a handful of fear in her soul. The Goblin King returned his face to a smile and turned back to his princess, placing the first seed of real doubt in Sarah's mind.